Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Thursday. Today is Thursday, isn't it? Good Lord. It is February the 20th, and today we are hoping that we're going to cash in. Yep. The vote, the final vote that we've been waiting for from the Senate will happen today. If you're listening to this later on in the day, you could tag it in the comments. I'll find out, obviously. But we're hoping that Kash Patel is confirmed by the Senate, that the Republicans in the Senate do their darn job and put the man in so that we can make the FBI great again. That is a great, great instinct. I want to talk today a little bit about projection that's going on. I've been noticing this trend. So we're going to have a couple of examples of it, and it is a strange thing to witness. Over the last couple of years, maybe 10 or 12 years even, kind of the Obama era, moving into the Trump era, that I don't know that it affected, but it was a speed bump, and then we had Biden. What we've seen is Democrats come in and break systems. They have demoralized and they have been able to sort of subvert the faith in institutions and other systems that we, generally speaking, want to work. And then when somebody else comes in and says, hey, we got a real problem here. Like our health system is failing. We've got a traffic safety system that is not working. We've got roads that are dilapidated and deteriorating. We've got trains that are derailing. Things like that. Whenever the team comes in that identifies the problem, acknowledges the problem, tries to accurately assess the problem and fix it. DOGE is a good example of what's happening right now, but there are other examples as well. It's pretty incredible because the people who actually broke the system look around and go, oh, you want to fix it? You're actually the ones who are responsible. That by acknowledging that there's a problem, you now have owned the mechanism for which the problem has been created. And it's crazy. It doesn't matter whether it's inflation or plane crashes or anything else. We're watching Democrats take this projection. So we're going to talk about that in the context of DOGE. Elon Musk identified it. I think that Donald Trump has identified it. And so, yeah, we're just getting this sort of like dishonest thing. The craziest piece is that the media is not being an honest operator on it, saying, well, this has actually happened for years. They don't do the fact check, right? They do their own kind of thing, which is the opposite of fact checking. They basically just kind of allow these sort of nebulous assertions to just float out there. Could be true. Could be true. Somebody said it, so we're going to just go along with it. Before we get into any of this stuff, let's talk about people that we think are operating in the honest and that are doing things that we would stand behind. That includes free speech. That includes the Second Amendment. That includes our first responders. And so let's pivot over here to our friends at Patriot Mobile. It's patriotmobile.com/KSS. The election's won, but the fight, as we were just talking about right now, to restore the great nation is only beginning. And that means it's time to take a stand in various different facets. And one of the ways you can do so is by doing it with Patriot Mobile. They're the only Christian conservative wireless provider, and they offer a way to vote with your wallet. You can take your pocketbook out and you can send a check to somebody that doesn't hate you, which is nice, without compromising on quality or convenience. That's the big issue here. If you have cell phone service in America, you can get cell phone service with Patriot Mobile. This is a call to action to defend your rights and your freedoms, again, with your checkbook, with your pocketbook, with your credit card, if that's how you pay. Patriot Mobile, you're going to get outstanding nationwide coverage because they operate on all three of the major networks. If you have cell phone service, you will get cell phone service. If you want American-based customer service, you can get that as well. That is not the case for most of the other places. The difference with Patriot Mobile is every dollar you spend supports the Second and the First Amendment, the sanctity of life, veterans and first responders, values you have, and switching is easy. You can keep your number, you can get rid of your number, you can upgrade or not, and you just do it by going to patriotmobile.com/KSS, or you can call 972-PATRIOT if you're that kind of person. You'll get a free month of service. That's what our promo code will get you. KSS, patriotmobile.com/KSS. Check them out. Consider a switch if it's the right time for you. All right. So we're getting into this discussion. I can't help but just focus on DOGE stuff because the media is fixated with it. They can't help it, and they are just diving in left and right. Here's a fun one. This is a neat little story that's covered by Daily Wire. And the press is getting a lot of mileage out of Elon Musk doing a T-shirt and nice jacket with his son X standing in the White House, or in the Oval Office rather, with Donald Trump. They're getting a lot of mileage out of these photos. But this is a great story, and this actually is the story that needs to happen in many ways with the FBI. So KASH Patel represents a potential for this. The story is written by Luke Rosiak over at Daily Wire, and it says, almost fired for working with DOGE, Social Security fraud expert now leads the agency. This is what we voted for, is it not? We didn't know that we were going to get it. We were kind of hopeful. But didn't we vote for people who actually know what the problem is to step up and solve said problem? I did. That's what I want. I want that to be the situation over at the FBI as well. The story is great because it's going with this like hourglass model. Right now, we have a bottom heavy hourglass. You imagine that if you turn an hourglass and you let it run for a long time, right? You have sand on the top, it drops through the bottom, and you fill up the bulb at the bottom until it's heavier on the bottom than it is on the top. We have a lot more experience at the bottom rungs of almost every federal agency. The actual people that do the job of fill in the blank federal agency, most of them actually do want to do the job. And in the same sort of 80-20 rule that you find in many things in life, 20% of the federal employees, it's almost the same in every organization, but 20% of your highest performers are doing 80% of the work. And most of that work is not going to get done without them. And more importantly, if you were to take them away, like, you're not going to get that agency to be successful. And this story is flipping that hourglass. It's the recommendation. I've given it to members of Congress. I've given it to people who are in the conservative reporting space. It's like, this is what needs to happen. You need to pick people who are closest to the mission, that understand what the function of an agency is. Because the people that are in the administration, that are doing the middle level and senior level management, oftentimes they are so devoid of contact with the mission, they don't know how to do it anymore. Or maybe they never did. In the case of the senior FBI officials that we keep seeing, and Steve Friend has been really good at calling this out, you can go to their LinkedIn, which they all have because they're all looking for a post-government job. You can go and see that they have maybe 5-6 years worth of casework. That's the only way that you're going to be the top manager in a bureaucratic system like the government. You're going to jump up, and you're not going to do the work for 15 years. And now you're in charge of things, but you haven't touched it in a decade and a half. Imagine what you were doing 15 years ago. Just take a moment and think about it. It's 2025, so 15 years ago was 2010. In 2010, I was going through pararescue indoc. I was 15 pounds lighter. I could run 2.5 minutes faster per mile. I could probably do 60 more push-ups in 2 minutes than I can right now. There's a lot of changes that happened. I had 0 children. I was unmarried. I drove a 1991 diesel truck, single cab, like a 1991 F-250 diesel with a 5 on the floor, which was awesome. But yeah, like life was very different for me. All my responsibilities were different. And all of the things that I know how to do back then, I'm not sure I know how to do a lot of that stuff today. I was just talking to a paramedic and going through sort of the skill set that I had as a paramedic, and almost all of the terminology, it's gone. I don't use it every day, and I haven't used it for a couple years. Out of there. It drops out of your brain. You think that people that are running these agencies that haven't touched the mission in 15 years know what the mission looks like today? That they've actually watched it evolve from that distance? I don't think so. So the story goes as this. Leland Dudek? That's a good name. D-U-D-E-K, Dudek. He was an obscure bureaucrat at the Social Security Administration who dedicated his career to stopping fraud. And then he started working with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, to do just that. He was looking for fraud, and he was like, oh, these people want to do fraud. I bet you he had a passion for doing that work. At 4:30 Eastern Time, my boss called to tell me that I had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation, he wrote on LinkedIn. They want to fire me for cooperating with DOGE. That's now been deleted, but it was obtained by the Daily Wire. Then, in a stunning reversal, the acting Social Security Commissioner, Michelle King, was kicked out of her job, or she resigned because she didn't want to go find fraud. And Dudek was reinstated with a big promotion. He took over her job to lead the massive agency on an interim basis. He's now the acting Social Security Commissioner. Do you get how wild that is? to take somebody from the bottom who actually was doing the work and put them up at the top. This is what needs to happen all over the place. Discovering and realizing competency and people who actually want to do the mission set is the only way that you are going to turn this stuff on its head. Everybody that is at the top of all of these agencies are entrenched in defending the agencies, mostly because their next job is going to come from the legitimacy and from the prestige of holding the job they were in. The only people that can be in charge of these places have to at least have an instinct to burn it down or to call out fraud. And why would it be that you are fired or put on administrative leave pending investigation for calling out the thing that you're supposed to do? He was a fraud investigator, and by calling out fraud, he was the problem. This is ubiquitous across government service at this point, folks. It is the experience of the suspendables. More on that later. There's actually a funny little story that came out in the Washington Post where they referenced me and some of the others. I gave an interview to a guy who was writing about it, and look, I think they accurately characterized our problem with what was going on. I had zero issues working in my federal agency. It doesn't mean I'm not a pain in the butt, because I am. And when I see problems, I call them out. That's what I was supposed to do, I thought. That's what you would expect somebody who has principles and honor to go do in their job. And this guy, Leland Dudek, did that. Said, hey, you got a large organization coming in to solve the problems? Cool. I look for problems. Let me tell you some that I found. And instead of looking around and going, oh, okay, this guy's doing his job, and he actually is a subject matter expert in this issue, great. Thanks for your help. Thanks for trying to make our agency better. What they do is they said, it looks like you're attacking our institution, and so you are the problem. You are the issue if you call out malfeasance within the federal government. This is across the board. If it happens at Social Security and FBI, you know it happens other places as well. It's very regular to experience a loyalty, not to the Constitution, not to the American taxpayer who pays your salary. They look at it like it's their money, the people that are running this. I assure you that this Michelle King character, without knowing anything more about her, the fact that she ran this organization and spent 30 years or whatever it was that she was there, because that's what we've been told. There's crying that's happening left and right on the political left for all these government bureaucrats and administrators. They're loyal to the institution, as my buddy Rob Green says. Not the Constitution, not the American taxpayer, not to the mission set for which their agency exists. And so if you call out a problem with the status quo, imagine Donald Trump is a good version of this. Elon Musk has been a good version of this. A lot of the whistleblowers have done this. They've said the status quo is a mistake, and we'd like to see it work. And when they do that, what you get is you're the problem. They have to come after you. And many of you have experienced this in private sector. It's different in private sector because at least then you have an owner of a company or you have a publicly held company, and in theory, they're accountable to someone. Either they're accountable to their own bottom line, so if they want to destroy it, they can. If they're accountable to an investor group, they'll be voted out because inefficiency can only last so long. The only way that that doesn't happen, by the way, is when that big company and publicly traded company is deeply in bed with the federal government, which bails them out. And then they have all the same problems of the federal government. More on that as well, because we're going to be talking about the airline industry as we kind of wrap up. I've been kind of sitting on it to see what was going to happen with the questions about DEI and whether or not there was an all-female flight crew for this Endeavor flight that happened and flipped over and ended up upside down in Toronto. So we're gonna finish with that today. But I did want to just talk about the DOGE situation. And as I said, nonstop crying about senior level people. The people who caused the problems are now being lauded as heroes. And if you're not careful when you do this work, and I do think that you're seeing some careful movements, but you're also seeing some non-careful movements. I'm going to actually call out why I think the errors that we're seeing, because they're saying, well, like DOGE is putting out numbers and some of them are false. That's probably true. They are probably getting some things wrong because of the speed they're moving. The second piece of it, though, is that the numbers are probably wrong because the systems that the government uses are so inefficient that someone who knows how normal functional systems work is not going to be able to interpret it. I'm going to go to a personal story real quick before we talk about the Homeland Security. I put it up on the screen here. We'll talk about that in a second. I have an above average intelligence. Many of you probably recognize that. Many of you are probably in that same boat where you're like, when you go into a system and the system is so difficult to understand that an intelligent person who makes a good faith effort is unable to be successful in that system. The problem is usually not the person who's using it. It's probably the system itself. All right. And that's what I think is going on with DOGE. You've got high IQ kids, young people, and those of us who are, let's say, if you're over 30, you have a certain sense that maybe you used to be a little bit quicker. When you're over 40, you definitely know that. My wife and I were talking about this last night. It's like, I used to be quicker. I actually used to grasp concepts more quickly. Am I more patient, more circumstant, more educated, more wise than I was then? Yes. But for raw horsepower, for just intellectual computing, I probably have gone over an edge. And many of you know that as you get older, that's not something you hold on to. When I was doing things inside the Bureau, what I saw was a FISA accountability system that was basically indecipherable to an above average IQ. And I wasn't the only one who had problems with it. When you see the DOGE kids coming in at 18, 19, 20, 25, they're at the peak of their intellectual capabilities. Their horsepower is at maximum rev. And they can't figure out or look through these systems and make heads or tails of what the numbers mean. The odds are it's the numbers and the accountability and the record-keeping systems that are the flaw. And knowing what goes on with federal government, that is almost 100% the case. Backwards, stupid, illogical, non-industry standard. That's the way things work. And the question is like, well, why do you do it this way? The FBI was known for reinventing the wheel all the time. They would spend tens of millions of dollars on a software system that they could have got off the shelf that already existed and worked fine. And then they would break it. They would take a really nice technology. They'd be like, yes, here's this nice technology we have. It works really well. Then they would break it by trying to make it fit their design requirements for, I don't know, national security protocols or something, whether it needed it or not. So it is very constant that systems within the federal government are the worst. It's not actually a joke. It's just sort of it's a coping mechanism that we used to say that the IT motto in the Department of Justice was yesterday's technology, put this in your head, yesterday's technology tomorrow. They would buy old stuff that was old today, and they wouldn't give it to you for a year or two. So the newest computer I ever got was a couple years old. This is across the federal government. There is nothing about the federal government that is, in fact, nimble. And so it's funny to see them call out these people. They're getting pissed that DOGE is occasionally moving too quickly and misinterpreting numbers and putting out headlines, which is good for what they're doing. They might be wrong sometimes. And then, because they're doing it, they're the problem. So here's Elon Musk talking about it. This is in that sit-down interview with Sean Hannity. I think he's not calling it projection, but that's what it is, where you look into yourself, see the problem that you have, and then you assign it to the person that is accurately diagnosing you. And that's what DOGE is getting hit with. It's their fault for uncovering the flaw.
And, people, like, it's funny how often when these attacks occur, the thing that they're accusing the administration of is what they are guilty of. They're saying that things are being done unconstitutional, but what they are doing is unconstitutional. They are guilty of the crime of which they accuse us.
That's always the first thing they do. He's in violation of the Constitution. They don't even know what they're talking. Well,
it's absurd.
It's just a con job. It's a big con job. And they're so bad for the country, so dangerous and so bad. And the media is so bad. When I watch MSNBC, which I don't watch much, but you have to watch The Enemy on occasion, the level of arrogance and cheating, and they're just horrible people. These are.
I mean, they are. They really are horrible people. Did you catch that in there? He just slipped it in. Sometimes you got to watch The Enemy. I only watch The Enemy. I mean, who cares what my team thinks? Who cares what people that mostly agree with me think? It's irrelevant unless they got it wrong. This is coming from NBC, speaking of. They're the more mainstream version of MSNBC, which is just 100% on the other team. Okay, Department of Homeland Security is preparing to fire hundreds of senior leaders this week. I'm going to go ahead and object to the term leader. I didn't work that much with DHS, but what I do know is that the federal government does not have a leadership culture. And it's actually antithetical to leadership. Leadership says, when there's a problem, I'm going to own it. And when there's a success, I'm going to promote the people underneath me. Right? That's what leadership looks like. Anybody who's experienced good leadership, you're like, why do I want to follow this person? You can break it down. And you can understand that people who are willing to own your mistake because the buck stops with them and they sit above you, they're the final decision maker, that's leadership. And people that will praise you publicly and chastise you and criticize you privately, They know about human nature. They understand what leadership is. That is the opposite of the federal government in my experience, across the board. This is the best part. So again, hundreds of leaders this week. This is NBC carrying water. The firings are not a move to reduce the size of the federal government. Well, it does seem like it might be. They claim, and this is editorializing, that it is to get rid of people in the administration that they see as not on board with its goals. One, that's normal. That is very standard in any corporate situation, that if you were to come in and say, here's what the board wants to do, you're no longer aligned with the board's goals, you said that you're antithetical to that and you're not going to be part of it, goodbye, you don't have a job here anymore. Your job is contingent on the pleasure of the people running the organization, and you are no longer wanting to be on that team. That's not a big deal. But it's crazy to me to say leadership, they're not reducing the workforce, even though they are. And then that these people are about not getting on board with the goal. So this is a loyalty test, is the argument. Let me make it a different way. Let me rephrase this for anybody who is concerned about federal workers that are at the top levels. Even those people who might otherwise, generally speaking, be your kind of person. It's the old, like, well, he's a good dude kind of thing. I hear that a lot. Here's the issue. If you are a senior manager, not leader, but a senior manager within the federal government structures, you had to get there by saying yes. And if your agency is involved in criminal malfeasance, if it is involved in unconstitutional behavior, if it's involved in immoral decisions, some of which are really simple, like you decided to enforce the COVID vaccine mandate because you had no spine. I know that there were people in those organizations pushing back because I was one in mine. And I know I'm not unique. Just like none of you are, that said, hey, you can't tell me what to do. You can't tell me to do something that is against my religious principles. You might take my job, but you can't command it, and you're not going to get fealty. There was a loyalty test that was done. And it was done in 2021. Most of you guys realize this. The loyalty test was very, very simple. Do what we say with no evidence that it is something that's going to benefit you. Do exactly as we tell you. They found a proxy for conservatives by looking for religious people. They found a proxy for people who do not worship the federal government as a god. And they said, we're going to find the people that actually believe in the real God, and we're going to make them bow to us instead. We're going to give them a false idol. And that false idol is Fauci and COVID compliance, and federal government knows best, and we get to tell you how to best live your life. And some of us saw it in real time. The evidence is abundant, and it's overwhelming. Here's Jim Jordan talking about people crying about stupid spending, and his example of stupid spending leads him to the idea that there are bureaucrats who think that they are above any system of check and balance. These top leaders at DHS, the people that have been saying yes to their institution and not constitution. He brings up this very obvious point that they lost credibility and they didn't notice. They didn't realize that we were watching. And so anybody that's not on board with what's going on today, this sort of mandate, this rebuke from the American people, which happened in both houses of Congress and the White House in November, they're out of touch. And they are no longer fit to lead these organizations. This seems totally logical. My buddy Phil says anybody that's a GS-15 or higher, he said about the FBI, but I think it's actually government-wide. If you're a GS-15 or higher, the odds are you haven't said no to bad ideas. And here's Jim Jordan talking about it. Is Jim Jordan my favorite? No, but he's a better and more articulate speaker than Elon Musk. You can tell he does this pretty well. And he actually does lay this thing out. We're going to go for about 1 minute and 45 seconds on this clip simply because he ends strongly, and I want you guys to hear it.
Democrats for now, 2 weeks have been saying instead of stopping the stupid spending, they attack the guy who's exposing the stupid spending. I think we should maybe get rid of the stupid spending. Trans comic opera in Ireland, Sesame Street on Iraqi television. I think maybe we should focus on that. No. Can't do that. And I think this just underscores the fundamental difference between the left and those of us in the Republican Party, those of us conservatives. The left thinks the bureaucrats are smarter than we the people. Got to trust the bureaucracy. Got to trust you got to trust the experts in the government. I'd rather trust the people. The 77 million people who elected President Trump, who told us he was systematically going to go through these agencies and identify dumb things that dumb things where taxpayer money is going to. He told us he was going to do it. The American people understood it. He got elected. Now he's carrying out that mission, and they're attacking the guy who's President Trump has put in charge of this effort. The bureaucrats who decided Big Bird and Bert and Ernie on Baghdad TV was a good use of taxpayer money. Can't question them. Can't do that. Can't question the people in the bureau. Can't question the 108,000 people who work at Treasury. No. They're smarter than the folks President Trump has asked to come in and look at where our tax money is going. Can't question, I think about this. The smartest bureaucrat in the history of the world, Dr. Fauci, the things he told us, we weren't allowed to question him for 2 years, and he ran our lives. And here's the irony. Everything he told us turned out to be false. Told us to tell us the virus didn't come from a lab. Yes, it did. We got agencies now that tell us that, confirm that.
There's a bunch more examples. It was completely arbitrary, and we knew that. A lot of us could see it in real time. Jim Jordan, is he a lot of talk and not a lot of action? Yeah, generally speaking, that seems to be the case. He's one of many people in Congress that need to act. They have no excuse today. They need to gather all of the folks on the Republican side. They need to whip the votes and solve problems. The Senate needs to do the same. They need to confirm KASH Patel. They need to do the thing that they promised that they would do, because now's the time. No excuses. You got both houses. So get it done. That's what we expect as Americans. That's what we expect to see. So it needs to happen. We're going to get into some of those arbitraries just as a little reminder, just a little touching of base, because he brought up Fauci. Isn't it interesting that we're all able to now talk about the thing that happened in 2020, 2021, the movements and the aggression that took place, where if you question the narrative, you were the problem? Many of us experienced it. Whether you worked in the federal government, whether you worked in private industry, whether you were just talking about it on social media, if you highlight the problem, like our guy from the Social Security Administration, you're the issue. Not the issue that you've highlighted. It's a deflection and it's a projection, and it's just such a simple thing that continues to happen. As I said, I've got an example of this that you guys will like. How arbitrary and how stupid it always was. We're going to bring that up right after this. Before we do, let's just remind ourselves that it's not over yet, folks, and you shouldn't just quit down on it right now. Check out preparelikekyle.com if you want to make sure that you can sleep better at night. Real peace of mind comes from knowing that your family is prepared for anything. My wife and I keep water in a storage closet. We also have food from My Patriot Supply. It's America's most trusted name in emergency preparedness. And they have a limited time discount right now on the 3-month emergency food kit, which is the one that we have 2 of in the closet. It stacks up pretty big, but it's worth having. It's not typical survival food. It gives you up to 2,000 calories per day on average. It's got 100% of the recommended value for 12 different essential vitamins and minerals. It's going to have 90 days worth of food, so that 3-month supply rather. And you got all kinds of different meals and extras, including chicken and beef and fruits and vegetables, giving you some variety so you're not eating the same thing every day. Talking about quality meals that last for up to 25 years in storage, which is nice to be able to hold on to. You've got options, and it still tastes like a home-cooked meal. It's going to be a thing that's going to keep you powered through any kind of danger. If the pandemic taught us anything, the Fauci moments, it taught us that we should keep things in our store shelves, because store shelves can empty out quite quickly. You don't have to wait for a crisis. The 3-month emergency food kit includes free shipping. It has a disaster replacement warranty, and there's 24/7 US-based support. This is a discount right now. $100 off at preparelikekyle.com. Again, preparelikekyle.com. And if you order before 3 p.m. today, so most of you will listen to this and have time to do so, then it'll get shipped in the same day. And they'll come in and block your driveway like they blocked mine, and put all that stuff out there. It's awesome, actually, to have like the UPS truck come out there. Speaking of UPS, we're going to talk about UPS. We're going to talk about USPS in just a second. I did want to show you how arbitrary these folks are, and they are truly arbitrary. If you don't recall this was one of the state health department leads, and I can't even remember her name. Oh, no, she was the former CDC administrator, Mindy something or other. I just remember grabbing this clip and having it in my back little archives. This is how arbitrary and capricious and not based on fact these people operated. Here she is talking about shutting down your lives and giggling about it because we're in charge. Not because we're the best, not because we know anything, but because I'm a pretty lady who's in charge of the CDC. So I'm going to make recommendations for you that you can't have things and make your own risk assessments, like Americans always have.
So I would call, probably the person I called most was the Secretary of Health and Human Services in Massachusetts. She worked for a Republican governor just to, but you know, when she was like, "Are you going to let them have professional football?" And I was like, "Nope." And she's like, "Okay, neither are we." You know, it was like conversations like that. So, or I'd be like, "So when are you going to think about lightening up a mess?" They're like, "Next Monday." I'm like, "Okay, next Monday."
Like, are you gonna just like let them have football or like no football? Like, I just want to know. Like, are you gonna do masking or like not masking? Like, how do these people think this was acceptable? And then they went out and spoke about it. That's the craziest thing. We all knew you guys were freaking liars. You're disingenuous. You're not honest operators. So when I hear Jesse Waters on TV last night talking about how he's got a friend who works in the DOD and works at the Pentagon, and he's a vet, and then he got hired on by DOD to come in and do work as a civilian, and he got laid off, and that's not okay. We should be, taking care of trigger pullers. We should be taking care of guys that worked overseas, special operators, whatever. Yeah, that's true. As we talked about, you're going to break some eggs that you don't want to if you're making this omelet. If you're going to lay off people like carte blanche, if you're going to just run across the board and say everybody that's probationary is gone, you're going to lose some good apples, some people that really should work in that space. But you know who I don't believe? Because I've never heard them cry about veterans before. I don't believe NPR. This is a military vet and a scientist securing America's food system. Why is that the federal government's job? Under what part of the Constitution did you see the responsibilities laid out for the senior executive to secure America's food system? Why are they involved in it at all? In fact, anything the federal government gets involved in gets more expensive because it's incredibly inefficient. But there you have a dour-looking guy. He could be any one of our friends on the screen here. He's on NPR's lead page. His name is Derek Copeland. He was an Air Force vet. He was running dogs. He was a dog handler, apparently. And then he was working dogs for the USDA. Most of the USDA seems pretty awful. In fact, my buddies who work in ranching country, they make fun of the USDA ratings. Like many of you go to the grocery store and you're picking USDA choice. Maybe you have a little bit more money. You spend money on USDA prime beef. And you're looking at that and you're like, okay, well, that's the quality symbol. My buddies make fun of that. Like people who run cattle make fun of that. Oh, you need a government certified butcher to be able to tell you what's a good cut of meat. And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of went like, yeah, that's the option I have. I live in an urban area. I don't really have the ability to go out and find like someone who's raising their own cows that I can look at and go, okay, this person's honorable and they're going to give us a good cut. But that's what happened for a lot of time. Did people abuse that? Yes. This is so funny. Things like USDA have probably outlived their usefulness in the same way that unions have outlived their usefulness. Because all of the safety checks and all of the expectations, even just the advent of social media and being able to just like, you can curry outrage so quickly that I'm not sure that the companies that are out there that would otherwise operate with bad faith can even exist in this time. Let me give you an example. We have a friend, a military veteran, special operator. I brought him up on social media a little while ago. He lives in Montana. He works for my friends over at Shield Arms. We'll plug them in a second too. Why not? He was going to the gym and being told that he couldn't. He's got a dog that was trained by a dog handler, probably like this guy, Derek Copeland. And he wanted to bring his dog to the gym because he's legally allowed to bring his dog to the gym under certain rules that we have for Americans with disabilities. This is not like some half-assed dog. This is like a very expensively trained Belgian Malinois or similar breed. Maybe it's like a Czech Shepherd or something. But this killer that is trained for bomb work and drug work and seizure work and a bunch of other medical things. Like this is a smart animal that has been trained with a lot of money to be able to make sure that my friend is safe when he goes places. Because he's got issues, because he's been blown up more times than he can count. Legitimately. Like literally cannot count how many times he's been blown up. An actual service animal. Not like somebody's emotional support bullshit. And the gym didn't want him to come in. And so what do? We push it out on Instagram. I push it out on Twitter in the two places. And that gym, which was in violation of some federal law and state law, immediately complied. Got phone calls from strangers. And they went like, we don't want this. We just want to make nice with you, man. We just want to make it okay. Did we need government intervention? Did we need the ADA to come in and do anything? No, literally just the threat of losing face online and with customers in your area who otherwise would sympathize with this guy. They were like, okay, we'll lose our business. People will not come to our business. There are other options to go to the gym. They can buy a home gym. And so they chose to comply. We got compliance with no legal action. That's more like, that's the American way. That's what needs to happen. Meanwhile, like I said, you've got them NPR over here dishonestly focusing in suddenly on military veterans. He was fully successful, but he got an email that said he was 11 days away from the 1 year mark. So he's a military veteran. He has a 1 year probationary period with the government. Up until that last day, you can be removed. Is it probably unjust? Yeah, probably it is. It's not good. And this guy might be awesome at what he does. 11 days away. That's the terms of the agreement. Why do we have people who are in this day and age not accepting the terms of agreement that they signed up for the job that they have? It's part of the game. It sucks, but that's what happens in federal employment. Up until the 1 year mark as a veteran, you could be removed for no reason. Up to the 2 year mark, if you're not a veteran, you could be removed for no reason. I've lost jobs for no reason. So have you, most likely. I got removed for being a straight male one time. They turned around and hired a gay guy as a paramedic because the office was full of women, lesbians and pretty ladies, lesbians and the women that the lesbian ladies wanted to work with. I kid you not. That's a real thing in a conservative Texas area. What are you going to do about it? And I called up and said, hey man, is there anything I can do? I called a lawyer. Can you guys protect me at all? And they were like, no, you're a straight white Christian male. Like, nope, you're heterosexual. The end. You're not discriminated against. I'm like, I'm a veteran. How about that? And they're like, they don't care. Doesn't matter. Like, okay, fine. This guy's going to be competent. He's going to go out and find another job. He also apparently has a military pension. So I think he's going to be okay. It's a bummer for him. But I don't believe for a second that NPR cares. And neither do you. These bureaucrats are happy to make arbitrary decisions about your life. They're happy to push this stuff forward and just do whatever. It's not a good solution, the government in general. And so to act like they're going to be the solution to you, and if you think that like you can rely on them, if you've only known the government, I encourage you to go out and find something other than federal government work. I'm encouraging the other suspendables right now. We're going to bring them up in just a second. But I'm just saying, it's not a good solution to it. And you can't rely, like nobody that works in a right to work state. I had somebody say, hey, this J6er lost his job because he liked Trump. And I'm like, bummer. Yeah, what do you want to do about that? Like there's a lot of people who had that experience. Maybe you did as well. And what do? You pick yourself back up and you get back to work. You find another job somewhere else because you can't, like, you're not entitled to anything. That's what yesterday's show was all about. Entitlement. If you're not entitled, then you're going to move forward. And generations, mine and before, maybe the ones after me don't get it, but the ones before me understood that you're not entitled to anything, that you are only entitled to no discriminatory shot at the journey, but nobody guarantees you success. Only you can. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about the airline stuff in a second, because there are some people that have been getting a leg up, and now they're suddenly realizing that, oh, it might actually have some costs. Before we do, let's talk about my friends over at, patriot-protect.com/Kyle. You have to ask yourself what your safety is worth, especially if you're getting phone calls. You're not entitled to get no phone calls, it turns out. Your phone is actually meant to pick up. If you are getting random phone calls and you don't want people to try to scam you, if there are people across the world that are crouched over dirty computer screens that are looking you up on Google, they can find out where you live. They can know where you work. They can know what your phone number is, the names of your family members. All these things are available online, and they can find your personal information, use these databases, and then target you. If you want digital camouflage, if you want to hide from them, Patriot Protect removes the personal data from the internet, wiping it from Google and other sites where these scammers and cyber criminals will find you. You didn't necessarily agree to share that information, so now you can take it back. You can stay private and secure and stay protected. Patriot Protect deletes this information from Google. It uses technology that scans and scrubs the internet from over 100 people search websites. I use these, by the way. They're really effective. They're super effective to find people, and they help remove the access that scammers would otherwise have for you. Once it's completed, it continuously monitors, making sure that all these instances do not pop up again. Again, it's patriot-protect.com/Kyle. 24 protection for about $5 a month on the annual subscription. Use that promo code KYLE. You'll save 15% off the annual. And you just have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Yeah, I have been getting way less scam calls, by the way. Between that and the silent bag I throw my stuff in during the show, very, very, very limited. It's nice. You guys want to look into that? Definitely check out our sponsors. They're the reason that we're able to keep doing this stuff. Okay, here's what I was talking about earlier. DOGE team, they have a wall of receipts showing errors. Again, non-honest operators, this is CBS talking about it. They're not talking about the fact that there are tons of problems and there's a ton of waste. What they're talking about, they're most interested in, is can we highlight the errors? So it's not the fact that they were spending money that they shouldn't have. It's the fact that the guys that went in and called it out, they didn't get everything right 100%. Again, I would actually say this is probably a record-keeping issue versus anything else. It's characterized as a documentation of money being saved. They have the wall of receipts. This is stuff they're posting out online. The initial accounting overstated the savings by billions of dollars. Right, but here's the problem. There are more than that in actual failings. There are tens of billions of dollars that they are actually showing accurately because there's tens of billions of dollars of fraud, waste, and abuse going on with federal contracts. The DOGE team misread specialized contracts. Experts told CBS. Who are these experts? And they overstated the push savings by as much as 1.96. So they overstated almost $2 billion worth of savings. Got it. But they're dealing with contracts that are in the 8s and 10s and $12 billion. So misstating an entire wall by $2 billion is a rounding error. And that's where you're getting the dishonest piece here. We're actually living in a place where people don't want any accountability for what they're doing. And if you do bring it up, this is a pretty great little version. This is Rich McCormick, he's a congressman from Georgia. He's talking to the Postmaster General, and I swear to God, you can't see it if you're just listening, but the guy literally puts his hands on his ears and stops listening because he doesn't like the way that the truth is being characterized to him in the middle of this hearing. He's just saying, Americans don't want to do things using government. There's a reason why we don't want government healthcare. There's a reason why you don't use the government postal service. Oftentimes because you actually want something to get there. We just saw a package that was being sent to Garrett O'Boyle. So he's up in Wisconsin. And it was shipped from 20 or 30 miles away from Garrett. And the next day, the same package was in Fargo, North Dakota. Why? Because it's completely illogical. And rather than put it on the next truck that goes out to his house, they sent it over somewhere so they could fly it back because the U.S. Postal Service is probably running on the same old antiquated systems that we had when we were running in the Bureau. Just a bunch of garbage, like people making bad decisions. Listen to the postmaster just denying it. He just doesn't want to hear it.
You were graded by the United States people, and they don't use your service anymore. You bankrupt.
That is not true.
You bankrupt this through your reputation only. Through your reputation, you are responsible for the fall of the Postal Service and the lack of accountability.
Congress is responsible for the fall of the Postal
so
Service.
it's Congress.
I am trying to fix
on your
the Postal
watch
Service.
With all the AI.
Before my watch, the same stuff happened.
With all the AI, with all the computer systems, you're worse than if I took a horse and picked up the mail and delivered it 2 miles down the road. That's you. I hope you got that on camera. This is the response that the postmaster just gave Congress when he doesn't like what he hears. Literally covered his ears and gave himself the grade of A. And with that, sir, I rest.
Yeah, like what else do you do when the guy's like, I'm not listening to what you got to say. It's your fault that my organization that I run is not working. You bankrupted us. Okay, dude, everybody's been to the post office. And even though that's probably one of the few things my wife and I disagree on because she likes the Postal Service for some reason, I think it's a remnant of being a New Yorker. But there is a thing. If you go to the Postal Service, they are probably the most inefficient people ever. How awesome is it if you go to the post office and get one person there that doesn't suck? It's like, I want to go to this post office all the time. What's your shift? Tell me your schedule. I'm coming to just deal with you. Mostly, they cannot be bothered. They put their hands over their ears and they don't give a shit. That's how they operate. All right, another story is coming in from CBS. This is more sort of DOGE related. But again, it's more like if you categorize the problem properly, then you're the problem. This one is really interesting. There's two back-to-back stories. Lawyers helping migrant children facing deportation order by Trump administration are told to stop all work. A legal services group that's offered to represent and give guidance to thousands of migrant children are facing deportation. Here's the problem. We do have a guest worker program in the United States. We have a migrant worker program. Do you know what a migrant worker is? There's someone that comes to the United States. They provide a service for cash, and then they leave the United States. How could that be children? How could there be 26,000 migrant children that are getting legal aid from the Akasha Center for Justice? I'm just throwing the question out there. Are we allowing children to come here on the migrant worker program? No. So what you're seeing is a disingenuous use of the word migrant, because we're not talking about migrants. We're talking about illegal aliens who are probably trafficked here by the cartels. That's the only way, or they came here with their family members who came here illegally. But they're not migrants in the same way that they were not asylum seekers, in the same way that they are not immigrants. They're illegal aliens. And so you just get this ridiculous usage of the word. And by shaping the word, they are creating you're the problem for identifying the problem. Because I'm just asking a real simple question. How can migrants be guest workers in the United States if they're not even allowed to work? And theoretically, the Democrats would care about these poor children, wouldn't they? The U.S. pauses immigration applications for certain migrants welcomed under Biden. So I went into that story too, because it's the next one. It's also on CBS. That's why I put them on the same slide here. It's like, oh, okay. Applications will be frozen and they'll remain in place indefinitely while government officials try to identify potential cases of fraud and enhance vetting procedures related to national security and public safety. They cited fraud and concern, and these migrants come from Latin America and also Ukraine for some reason. And then you dig a little deeper into it, and they're talking about the parole system. The Biden administration used the parole system at an unprecedented scale. This is CBS reporting it. I'm not making this up, and I don't have to say it. I just know what the parole system is and what it's not. And it partially encouraged migrants to sign up under legal migration channels. Again, that word migration, which they don't mean it by what it means. That means you're going to go back. Migration, right? Ducks, geese, birds, they're migratory. That means they spend time in one place and then time in another. Do we think any of these people are coming here temporarily just so they can go back later? No, they want to move here permanently. And that's what the parolee system does. The Trump administration moved swiftly to suspend those efforts, arguing that the Biden administration had abused the parole system. You can type in immigration parole, even to a left-wing source like Google, and get the following. Immigration parole allows non-citizens to temporarily live in the United States for urgent humanitarian reasons or for significant public benefit. They have to be a net positive for us, or there must be a significant humanitarian reason. Not having a job in your crap country, what did Donald Trump call them? Shithole countries? If you don't have a job in your crappy country, that is not an urgent humanitarian reason. That doesn't make you a migrant. It doesn't make you a refugee. It doesn't make you an asylum seeker. It makes you someone who wants a better life, and we're not mad at you for that. That's fine. But that there is no immigration status or formal admission to the country that is granted with parole. It's a temporary reprieve. And then you've got people crying about it. Blows my mind. Like, how about those people? We want to see those people held accountable for fraud because they've been defrauding the American people. The people that have been allowing these folks in have been defrauding the American people. So how about use your prosecution for that? Meanwhile, you've got stuff coming in from, this is what? Is this NBC or, NBC News again. Top DOJ officials are now offering different explanations. What you're seeing is this big anger on the left that they're suddenly dropping charges on Mayor Adams in New York City. Eric Adams is basically getting the charges for corruption dropped. The squeeze play works. He was charged after he decided to go against the Biden administration. He's said that he's going to cooperate with the Trump administration. That's pretty funny. Do I think Eric Adams is a conservative or a good guy? No, but whatever. The DOJ gets to decide whether or not they're going to prosecute and use resources. And if they think that his public corruption thing, which has probably been sitting there for like a decade, based on what we talked about with the folks in the New York field office, the odds are is that case has been sitting there for a long time. They had the opportunity to push it forward. They chose not to until he angered the Biden administration. Now he's in the Trump administration era, and the Trump administration people say, we don't want to spend the time on it. And a judge is going to decide whether or not they can drop the case. The prosecutor said, we're not going to fight him. We don't want to do it. And so you've had people resign, and they are showing exactly what they're interested in. Political outcomes. They're loyal to a team and not to the mission. The mission is whatever is directed of you. Imagine if you're a soldier and someone says, hey, your job is going to go over and capture that village. And you're like, well, I'm not going to do it because I like that village. You might get shot. You're disobeying orders in the middle of a war. That could happen to you. You refuse to go do something, you're probably going to at least be detained. And in this case, if you had people that work under Pam Bondi, who gets to set the precedent, you don't get to decide your workflow. Like, yeah, you're loyal to the Constitution. If they asked you to do something like go and set up a fraud case, go in there and set somebody up. Let's go ahead and do a frame job. You can't do that. But if someone said you're no longer working on this case because we're not interested anymore, we're not going to develop resources to it. What choice do you have? You could go forward and say you've got a problem with it. You could share it with a member of Congress. You could go to your state officials and say maybe they can carry it. But if DOJ is not going to carry the prosecution, they're not going to do it. I know that the Biden administration did not allow prosecution of Chinese spy-like activity in the Western District of Texas. They refused to go forward with prosecutions, and they had the right to do it. Should they have prosecuted? Absolutely. Was it problematic? Yes. Was it their ability to do that? They did have the carte blanche ability to decide whether or not they were going to go after it. They also decided they weren't going to prosecute Jim Biden. From everything I've heard out of Florida, they had a actionable case of fraud, of him representing something and real public corruption. And the local AUSAs, that's the federal prosecutors in Florida, said that they wanted to go forward in Palm Beach, and were told that they could not because DOJ Maine, Biden's administration, said no. And there's nothing you can do about that. They just decided they weren't going to bring the case. Was it corrupt? Absolutely. And this might be corrupt too, but they have a right to do that if you're the boss. You get to set the priorities. Now, if there's money exchange or some other federal crime that's involved in it, but if it's just someone saying, yeah, we're not going to prosecute Mayor Adams, then that's what's going to happen. And we can't listen to these people and take them seriously because they're not serious people. Here's people arguing on behalf of government work. Listen, imagine that you've seen, you're mad about the waste. You say that it's fraudulent, that they're not going to bring the resources of the DOJ. How about the thing they did spend their money on? This one actually sounds like parody. This is another DOGE call out. This is a woman named Summer Harvey, apparently. C-SPAN carried it. She's a grad student at George Washington University outside of D.C. And she's crying about she can't continue doing the cancer research that is supposed to be broken out by your sexual orientation. This stuff can't be made up. And so you've got crazy people who are legitimately sounding like a parody account. So until they get their own house in order, you're not going to be able to say, hey, we're all lined up. Everything we got is going square on the left, and the right is now the ones who are going to allow corruption because they're allowing this sort of stuff to happen under their research doctrine.
National Cancer Institute funded study was terminated. I never received a written letter, but I was told to stop work immediately and that no more research expenditures would be allowed. My study to explore how to safely collect sexual orientation and gender identity in cancer care practices was in response to the American Society of Clinical Oncology, the American Medical Association, the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force, and many other national professional standard-setting bodies that recognize that we need better data to create better clinical guidelines for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex people.
That's an academic telling you that lesbian, gay, whatever else she said, intersex and queer people all need to have different types of healthcare because their bodies apparently react to cancer differently. And so we need to spend money on researching it. It's hard to take them seriously because that would be parody anywhere else. And you go, where do they get this stuff from? They get it from the very top. They get it from the top leaders in their own crazy party. Here's J.B. Pritzker. He's a governor and a billionaire, a real billionaire per him. He's also a huge fat guy, talking about how the Trump administration is so mean, they're going to deport people. And when they get done deporting all the illegal aliens, like the tens of millions of people that are here illegally and have no right to be here that we talked about, the so-called migrants that are actually just illegal aliens, when they're done with those, they're going to deport gay people. And then they're going to do a Holocaust, is what he sort of leads to. It's funny because all of us who were working under the COVID crises that saw the sort of COVID tyranny that was coming down, we all actually saw the Holocaust step up. It was going and persecuting people for religious beliefs, things that the Constitution actually defends. There's nothing about the Constitution defending people that come here illegally and break American law, particularly about immigration. And you don't have any special orientation protection. Just because you like to sleep with men or women and you are a man or a woman doesn't mean that you have some sort of special status and that cancer treats you differently. But here he is. Apparently, that's who's getting deported next in Trump America. After we get rid of the 10 million or 20 million people that came here illegally, it's the gays and then everybody. Maybe Democrats. I don't know.
What comes next? After we've discriminated against, deported, or disparaged all the immigrants and the gay and lesbian and transgender people, the developmentally disabled, the women, and the minorities, once we've ostracized our neighbors and betrayed our friends, after that, when the problems we started with are still there staring us in the face, what comes next? All the atrocities of human history lurk in the answer to that question.
Oh, okay, sure. All the atrocities. Yeah. Meanwhile, one of the atrocities that's been happening in this country since you've opened up the borders and allowed people to be sex trafficked and to be smuggled into this country and abused is that we had criminal cartels based in Mexico and Latin America get very, very wealthy on bad American policy. And here's how I know the political left is crazy. I'm not just playing this because the lady is doing boobs on the TV, but if you're watching right now, it's going to be boob time. Because apparently she thought this was the way to get her TikTok message across. Imagine being on the political left, like this guy Pritzker was, and you're saying we're so against Donald Trump's agenda that we're now going to root for the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And my friend are the drug cartels that are responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans a year by moving in fentanyl and all kinds of ugly poisons across the thing. And also sexually abusing women and dropping them into sex slavery and putting kids into work camps because that's what happens. Those migrant children that are apparently coming here that are working underage in food packing plants and other crazy stuff. You're going to side with those people. And somebody mentioned it. It's always the eyes. I didn't actually notice the eyes. Maybe you guys will. Here we go.
We might be saved by the most unexpected group of people. Do you know who Trump's trying to declare war on? The cartel. Oh, please do. Please do. Fuck around and find out, Trump. We might be saved by the most...
She's legitimately saying that maybe the cartels will save us. That's a pretty wild take. Like I said, I have no idea whether she had crazier eyes or not, but it sounds like that. Here's a guy that does have crazy eyes. Again, this is what happens. When you start aligning with the craziest ideas, you get the craziest people coming out. They're going to straight up stand against KASH Patels and Tulsi Gabbard. And how about RFK? RFK said, he's pleaded that children matter and we should try to make things safer and we should have good looks into all the medicines that we want to have and vaccines should be evaluated like any other drug. Apparently that means that we're going to take your meds. If there was ever somebody who needed meds, we found out that it's basically liberal women and liberal men require it. They are the most unhappy people. This guy would have been the most unhappy person until the women outpaced him. He still seems like he might be one of the most unhappy. I'm just giving you examples of some of the crazies because I saw this, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. This is how I know, just by default, whatever this guy is against, I'm for.
Hi, RFK. You want to come take my meds? You can take them. Come on, Bobby. Bobby and Donnie, come on. You can get my meds. Come on, it'll be fun. You want to take them? You want to take my meds? You want to take my friends' meds, too? We'll all get together. We'll go off. I'm going to go off them. Do you want me to go off them now? I will go off them because I want to. I want to go off them. I'm going to go off them just for you, Bobby. You want to come join me? It'll be fun. Let's get this party started.
That's like a, I don't know what that is. He has a ponytail. Kind of looks like what happened to Steven Seagal when he fell off the wagon of whatever, when he started eating more cheese than he should have or something. Heavyset, like lunatic. That doesn't sound like a healthy person. Again, whatever that guy's for, I'm against. Whatever that lady with the boob shot was, whatever she's for, I'm against. If she's going to root for the cartels, I'm 100% in on whatever the other option is. It's wild. And these are the same people that think that DEI is the solution, that you have to have diversity and so on and so forth. You got to go out there. How about this fun story? We've been kind of watching it. I don't know that it's true that but they obviously had a focus on it. This is Endeavor Airlines. This is the story that came out of, who is this? ABC story, hanging like bats from their seats. I can imagine that was a terrifying experience. I've got a video of it right here. Let's just talk about it. Video emerged of the chaotic crash that happened on Tuesday. So earlier this week, Delta flight 4819 flipped over on the runway, Toronto Peterson Airport. A lot of people speculating this was because there was a female flight crew. Here's kind of why I think that is the case. If these people were really, really competent and there was some sort of other error that had happened, they would have said something about it. They'd be like, oh, no, look, we had very experienced this. Remember how the claim was is that it was a female Black Hawk pilot was the problem. And they're like, there was a male flight instructor. This was a co-ed team that was doing it. You haven't heard that yet. And this is the same group that did this piece. So here's Endeavor Airlines kind of playing this game where they're focusing on women, I don't know, ruling the world, saving the world. They put these out on their own TikTok channel. Endeavor is the regional jet carrier operator that was working on behalf of Delta.
Girls, come on. Leave the saving the world to the men? I don't think so.
Catchy.
I don't think so.
Live fast, die young, bad girls do it well. Live fast, die young.
No, we ain't giving no hold. I ain't Romeo and no hold.
So there's a compilation of these TikToks where they're doing weird stuff and bouncing their heads illogically and sort of unrhythmically. You've got various different cool musics and stuff like this. You're showing women in the cockpit. You're showing that they have all women flight crews, and they're referring to it as unmanned. They have unmanned flights. Why? Because there's no man involved in the flight. There's no man that is flying. So they have a female flight crew. There's a female stewardess crew or whatever you call them now. Flight attendants are all doing this kind of thing. And I guess that's kind of like how it starts. And then it goes like this, something like this. So you've got a guy filming from his cockpit. He's watching the plane, and I've listened to a lot of commentary. Now it's on fire. That's the best. Oh, now it rolls over, and now it's upside down. It broke the wing right off. So you're seeing that on the screen. If you guys haven't seen this video footage, it's actually shocking. I can only imagine being in there because I've been on some rough landings just like you have. You land in an aircraft and suddenly like it bounces pretty hard and you're like, whoa. The goal is, because I've listened to a number of pilots talk about this exact problem. They said as you come in, they were probably trying to come in a little bit hot, which is okay. You're allowed to do that. You come in really hot so that you can basically flare at the last second, which means you're going to pull up and you're going to just decrease that rate of descent. And they were coming in fast because there were 70-mile-an-hour crosswinds. There were some heavy crosswinds and snow. Okay, good, fine. That's a technique. Apparently there was no flare in this one. Either misjudged the altitude and the descent or just came in too fast and just didn't know to pull up. Could have been an experience thing because you're talking about a regional jet. Either way, it makes you ask some questions. And this is not like an inexpensive problem for Delta. Delta wasn't like they were operating underneath, but the regional carrier that did it, they're talking about offering $30,000 to the 80 passengers each, $30,000 each. And that doesn't stop them from settling or doing anything else, apparently. They crash landed and they're talking about paying them out. So this is a cost. Like you can do stupid things up front. You're going to end up paying for it in the end. If this was a DEI situation where they basically said, we're going to put an inexperienced flight crew together, this will come out. The flex is, though, don't worry about what's going on with the regional jet. Don't worry about pilots that are inexperienced or putting people in that basically for metrics. Let's call it something that Donald Trump did. It's probably Donald Trump's fault. Again, the people who come in and identify a problem are probably the problem when you are siding with government. And for whatever reason, we're seeing the media do the same thing. Here's Dana Bash talking about it. They want to be able to highlight that this is Trump's fault. I'm going to show you why that's not the case in just a second. It's easily debunked. Here we go.
This is happening against the backdrop of massive cuts across the federal government, including at the FAA. Just going to put some up on the screen. Hundreds of FAA employees have been laid off as part of Elon Musk going through all the federal agencies.
Oh, God forbid. Oh, God forbid. Hundreds of federal employees. Like there are millions of federal government employees. They do the same thing over on CBS. This is Gail, what is her name? Gail King, I think, talking about this. And she's talking to the CEO of Delta Airlines, who's like, no, there's like 50,000 FAA employees. Like, you don't have to worry about that.
The Trump administration recently fired many employees of the FAA administration. Do those cuts worry you? And do you think that impacts the safety? I know you just said it's the safest way to travel, but after looking at all these mishaps, a lot of people are very nervous. Do these cuts affect you?
The cuts do not affect us, Gail. I've been in close communication with the Secretary of Transportation. I understand that the cuts at this time are something that are raising questions, but the reality is there's over 50,000 people that work at the FAA, and the cuts, I understand, were 300 people, and they were in non-critical safety functions. The Trump administration has committed to investing deeply in terms of improving the overall technologies that are used in the air traffic control systems and modernizing the skies. They've committed to hiring additional controllers and investigators and safety investigators. So, no, I'm not concerned with that at all.
Yeah, no reason to be concerned about that. But let me just say, can I just feed you your opinion, CEO of an airline? Can I ask you if it's the fault of the government? Can you put that fault on? Because that's what I would like it to be. And he's like, no. And why does he say no? Probably because he understands his own industry. Odds are that's how he became the CEO, if I had to guess. Usually it's competency. That's just how things work in the private sector. What you're looking at on the screen here is 2008 onward. I think I actually have it on my screen. It actually goes deeper than that. This is a month-by-month accidents per calendar year. So month and year grid looking. And let's see. From what I can tell, I'm just eyeballing it real quick here. January, after Trump got in, January 2025 has the lowest number of accidents per year since 2007 in any month. During that time, there are like 150 plus months. It's the absolute lowest. I don't see a single one less than 62. And right now, February might even be less. It's at 26 at this point, and we're 20 days in. So this data poll shows you that not only are these like common and they happen all the time, there are less now than there have been in, like 16, 17 years. How about that? So what do you do with that information? You have to just notice that they're highlighting something, trying to act like the problem is that Sean Duffy took over, when they don't want to acknowledge that the people who broke it, and one of those people was people like Buttigieg, they had the opportunity and they didn't fix it. So now that people are calling out the problem, they're the ones that are being told that they're responsible. It's the projection you heard about right from the beginning. It's just, it's illogical to listen to people like that. I don't know how else to deal with it. In any case, I got a kind of a funny palate cleanse from the from the folks like Key and Peele. They did a funny thing. It makes me wonder if they're actually a little bit more conservative than most people would think in Hollywood. They have a pretty good skit. Lastly, we'll just say this. There's a good piece over in the Washington Post. I'll post it over on KyleSeraphin.com so you guys can find it in the archives. Cheering Kash Patel's nomination, a group of ex-FBI agents turned critics. FBI nominee Kash Patel has ties to a group of agents who call themselves the Suspendables in the Washington Post and the New York Times now at this point, and they have called for firings and change because firings and change are the only way that you head off this problem. When the problem is if you call out the agency, you're the problem. The agency has a serious problem, and we think that Kash is the right guy for it. I will leave the article up for you guys to read. Again, praying for Kash in this moment as they go forward, and that the senators do the job that they are supposed to, which is to say give Trump the cabinet and the FBI director and the people that he needs in place to turn the ship around. We hope that's what happens, and I hope you guys don't mind, but that's an advocacy position that I'm going to have, and I'll continue on with it. All right, before we run to the palate cleanse, because it is kind of funny, let's just say rumble.com/KyleSeraphin is where you can always catch us live. But if you're sick of finding ads on YouTube, if you're sick of the ads that happen on Rumble, you can always find us at KyleSeraphinShow.com. That is Spotify. You can download the app or watch it actually on the website. It doesn't matter how you do it. But if you stream there, we actually get credit for it, which is number one. And number two, it's ad-free. And number three, it's free. You don't have to pay for a subscription. This isn't like Joe Rogan where you got to pay in to be able to have access. You get access to us simply by going over to Spotify. I'd appreciate it if you guys do that. If you watch it in the replay and you're sick of catching the ads, that's the place to do it. Tell a friend, share it with a friend. If you're getting good information, make sure that we continue to expand that out, and I do really appreciate it. Here's kind of a little funny, lighthearted moment where you confront people with their own bad ideas, and, it's hard. It's hard to argue against this stuff. The idea of doing tax and spend, like people are voting in their own negative interest. It's almost never in your interest to have the government come in and solve your problem, as we've been demonstrating today. So here's a little kind of a joke on the way out the door.
Know how us Democrats like a shortcut, like government spending to prop up the economy.
Nothing more we love than those federal programs. You two are Democrats, aren't you?
What?
Of course we are.
You see the color of our skin, don't you? How could we not blindly vote Democratic?
That would be ridiculous.
Whatever. All I know is my polling place closed in 15 minutes.
Why, that would be terrible.
Awful. Are you going to elect tax and spend politicians if you can't vote?
It's hard enough to vote with all those voter ID laws. Republicans.
Gosh darn Republicans.
I know, I'm just like, grrr.
Tell it to Douglas.
Right.
You know, if there were any Republicans here, whoa, I'd be pissed. I'd be royally pissed.
Me too.
In fact, I would take their hard-fought principles and I'd shove it right up their keisters.
We seem to be driving in circles.
Don't worry, we're almost there. Look, it appears we've hit somebody. We should get out and help him.
Oh, my leg.
Oh, my leg.
Whoa, there you go.
I am pissed. What? I'm royally pissed. Now, although it was only this one man's fault, I will be using all of your tax dollars to get healthy, thanks to the Affordable Health Care Act. I know it doesn't seem fair, but that's supposedly the law of the land nowadays.
You don't look that hurt. Why y'all wearing those same leather jackets and those dad jeans?
Disperse!
The undercover black Republicans and were trying to red pill those guys in the bus. Poor things. Anyway, it's kind of funny. Like, Keen and Peele, I think they oftentimes have very good takes on things, including they've called out a bunch of stuff, people focusing in on gay and focusing in on DEI stuff. And makes me wonder, maybe they're just like more middle of the road people who think that some ideas are bad and that you don't have to blindly vote. How are you going to blindly vote for the tax and spend? Anyway, all right, follow us over there. If you guys want to stick around, I will drop the Rumble chat directly into the American Radicals podcast, which comes up next. If you guys are not there, you can check it out at AmRad Pod. They're on X, they're on YouTube, they're on all of the places. I believe they're also on Spotify. You can find them there. American Radicals podcast, Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle, the other Suspendables mentioned in that Washington Post ad. God bless all of you. Have a great day. Look forward to it. Let's get cash in, and I'll see you guys for Friendly Friday tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.